Hi, Mr. Lambert. This is Spencer. I'm going to be doing my Expos. I have it meh, and to be honest, my last page of the Expos is bad, to be nice, be in good terms. I can do it, but I have to constantly think about it, and I pause. But I'll work on it over the week and get it much better, and I'll have another video attached of my boards and what the interactiveness is going to be. The boards aren't done yet, so I couldn't do them for the presentation. But I'll have everything ready, practice, and I'll have everything good by La Costa. And I'll have the OO and the other video attached for the board. So here goes my Expos. Policemen. The people here to serve and protect. But how do they serve? Do they walk the old granny across the street? Perhaps they counsel the children. Or maybe they get rid of those who ruined the ending to Game of Thrones. They might do some of these more than others, but what they really do is protect and enforce the law. But what about those weird laws they might not know they can enforce? Like how in Arizona, if you're caught stealing soap, the policeman can legally force you to go into the shower and wash yourself with that soap until it's all gone. As Lisa Wojna wrote in her book, Weird U.S. Laws, Strange, Bizarre, Wacky, and Absurd, there's a staggeringly high number of odd laws in effect. So let's look up the history and origins of some of these laws, how these laws came to be, and the implications of why if I lived in Eureka, California and had a mustache, it would be illegal for me to kiss anyone. Okay, just to get personal for a second, my coach told me to use police puns to transition from point to point, but all the puns I came up with were awful, so I'm just going to give it a rest. I'll just talk about the past and present of some of these laws. Let's look at an older law. In Florida, if an elephant is left by a parking meter, you are not exempt from the fees and will be ticketed if the meter expires. John Ringling of Ringling Bros Circus fame moved his winter operations to Sarasota in 1927. After he purchased St. Armand's Key in 1917, he enlisted the help of many elephants to build the first causeway for St. Armand's Circle, which is now a popular tourist destination. There is no current statewide need for this law, but technically it hasn't been repealed. A more local example would be how in Arcadia, California, peacocks have the right of way. Anywhere. This means if a peacock is crossing the road, or your driveway, or anywhere else in fact, they get the right of way. This came to be after Elias J. Baldwin, the founder of Arcadia, came back from a trip with India with about 50 peacocks, which brought the beginning population of peacocks to the area. Interesting factoid, by the way, Elias J. Baldwin was also known as Lucky Baldwin, because he was successful in almost any business deal he did. But what happens when these laws aren't replaced? Well, in Florida, it's illegal to have sex with a porcupine. Who knew? Well, apparently, two tourists from Petersburg, Russia, named Anton and Evany didn't. They decided to go partying one night and had a brilliant idea when drunk. They decided to have kinky time with a porcupine. Once they got this fabulous idea, they went searching in the forest and, sadly, found a porcupine. After kinky time, they took a flight from Florida to Los Angeles and took a stop at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Diagnosis: they had porcupine needles right in the family jewels. But they didn't have to answer to the law, having left Florida before seeking medical attention. Okay, my coach hasn't found out I haven't used police puns yet, so I think I'm almost off the book. So why are these silly laws still intact? Well, to understand this, we have to first understand the steps for repealing a law, and second, where these laws came from. Senator Laura Thailand says that repealing a law requires the same steps as creating one, and creating a law requires around 14 steps. The basic are as follows. Step 1, draft the law. Step 2, introduce it in-house. Step 3, send it to a committee. Step 4, the committee decides what to do with the law. Step 5, it goes to the Rules Committee. And Step 6, the floor takes action. And this goes on and on and on. This can cost a decent amount of money and take up to 2 years to be passed or failed. So the government and states basically think, instead of wasting time and money on a law that's not enforced and isn't even relevant today, they'll just leave it as is. So where did these laws come from? Well, that's another thing we need to focus on. Florida Coastal School of Law professor James Woodruff said these laws and many others like it came to be during the 1800s around the religious revivals. This was known as the Second Great Awakening. In better terms, the Second Great Awakening was a Protestant religious revival movement during the early 19th century in the United States. After 1820, membership rose rapidly among Baptist and Methodist congregations whose preachers led the movement. But even if this was a religious revival and a push to bring morals to the USA, wouldn't someone have the common sense not to have kinky time with a porcupine? Just think about that for a second. How many people were so stupid to have sex with the porcupine that they had to make a law to protect these animals from their actions? Just think about that for a second. Oh, wait. One of the most important questions that needs to be answered is, are these laws still important? Well, the answer is some of them. The Florida law that unmarried women can only skydive on Sundays may or may not be important. In the past, the Florida law was important because porcupines were an important part of Native American and civilian culture. Their quills were used for head dressing and a variety of Native American accessories, while because they were rodents and had hair, they were an expensive source of fishing bait. Hey, so maybe that's why this law was created, to protect these noble beasts from idiots who would want to use them for their own nefarious purposes. That's why they are important, because they're part of our history. They can teach us about our past and the Second Great Awakening. They can also bring our attention towards laws that need clarification on how they're written and defined. For example, did you know in a 50 square miles section of Yellowstone National Park, it's commonly stated you can get away with murder due to a loophole in our laws? Constitutional lawyer Brian Colt states that, this is where I mess up, states that Article 3 of the Constitution says that under, God, I'm sorry, Mr. Lampert, it's really, I've been working on this piece for like 5 hours today and I can't get it. Okay, I'll start this section over. This is like starting on the last page. Constitutional lawyer Brian Colt states that Article 3 of the Constitution says that a federal criminal trial must be held in the state in which the crime was committed. And the Sixth Amendment entitles federal criminal defendant to a trial by jurors living in the state and district the crime was committed. But if the crime was committed in a section of Idaho, an uninhabited section of Idaho, then it would be impossible to form a jury. And being federal land, the state would have no jurisdiction. Thus, the constant claims of a murder loophole. However, all national parks are under federal law. And as we all know, murder is illegal. So until this murder loophole is tasted in federal court, we will not know if it is true or not. Our laws are important because they build the foundation for our country. It helps us do what's right and protect our land, our people, and the creatures we share it with. Today, we've looked at some of these wacky laws in their history, where these laws came from and why, and we've analyzed why these laws are important and how they can help us become a better nation as a whole. Yes,